The email landed in my inbox at 4:12 p.m. 3 minutes after Julian's assistant sent a revised seating chart for tonight. Subject: Q4 incentive reallocation. Internal only. I didn't have to open it. Marissa texted me a screenshot before legal even finished redlining it. Marissa, she's actually doing it. The 1% on Midwest Logistics. She moved it to Reeves. Me, I see it. Marissa, that's 1. 2 pre-tax. Ethan, that's your number. That was in your comp letter. Me, it was... I closed the phone. Leaned back in the COO chair Victoria had picked out for me 2 years ago some Italian bullshit with no armrests. Because she said armrests made people look defensive in Zoom calls. She'd laughed when she rolled it into my office. We were still sleeping in the same bed then. By 6:30, the River North lobby was loud enough to cover the sound of people pretending they hadn't read the memo. Langford Global had closed Midwest Logistics on December 22nd. My deal, my diligence team. My all-nighter in Delaware reading through warehouse liens while Victoria was in Aspen doing a Forbes profile about the new face of women-led supply chains. Now we were celebrating. Julian was already on the riser before Victoria took the mic. He stood just behind her left shoulder, holding a glass of something clear with too much ice. He'd started wearing his hair swept back last month. Victoria liked it. She'd told me once it made him look like a founder. Before we toast, Victoria said, tapping the mic. The room tilted quiet. We talk a lot about agility at Langford, and the fact is, Q4 wasn't just about the numbers, it was about the glue. Julian stepped far outside his remit during the Midwest close. Cross-functional alignment, stakeholder management. She smiled sideways at him. And frankly, emotional steadiness when the rest of us were running on fumes. She paused. I watched Claire Donovan's mouth flatten from across the room. So the board and I agreed this afternoon. Victoria went on. We're reallocating the Q4 special incentive pool. Julian will be taking the performance allocation attached to the Midwest close. It'll fund his spot in Stanford's executive program next fall. Let's hear it for strategic agility. Applause. Hesitant at first, then louder, because no one in this building keeps their job by sitting on their hands. Julian stepped forward, took the envelope Victoria handed him, and ducked his head like he was embarrassed. He mouthed thank you to her, not the room. I didn't move, just checked my watch. Nate drifted over while the clapping was still dying. He was in from New York, technically here as an outside council observer. Jesus, he said under his breath. Did she just dilute you in public? Not diluted. I said, terminated. You gonna say something? No, I'm gonna go home. The car was idling at the curb. Julian caught the elevator down right behind me. Of course he did. Ethan, he said, all breathless sincerity. Torai mentioned the restructuring. I told her we should loop you on the comp committee minutes earlier, but you didn't. I said, hitting the lobby door. It's just a rebrand line item. He tried. You guys are married. End of the day. It's the same household PL, right? I stopped, looked at him. You keep saying PL like you know what it means. I said, you couldn't read a warehouse variance if your life depended on it. Julian, but congrats on the Stanford tuition. He didn't follow me to the car. Victoria got in 10 minutes later. She smelled like Le Labo and hotel ballroom. She slid into the town car without a word, scrolled her phone for 4 blocks, then sighed like I was the one making this difficult. Don't make this a thing. Ethan, she said without looking up, you're my husband. Our assets are joint anyway. If you wanted the Stanford brochure framed on the credenza, you could have just asked. You didn't take my bonus. Torai, I said, you took my name off the deal in front of the room. She finally looked at me, that expression she uses in board meetings patient, slightly amused, like the other person is stuck in a semantic loop. The deal was the company's. You ran point. Everyone knows that. Julian needed a win, so he stops threatening to jump to Gartner. Optics. Optics. I repeated. Yeah, so bill me. Or don't. We both know you won't leave. The car pulled up to the penthouse garage. She stepped out first, already talking about tomorrow's call with Claire. I followed her into the elevator, punched the button for the apartment, and opened the Notes app on my phone. Typed one sentence. Sent it to Nate. Me. Pull the trigger on that Chicago short. Full position. Victoria was kicking off her heels in the foyer when I walked past her into the bedroom. Ethan. Yeah, you're sleeping in the guest wing? Packing. She laughed. Actually laughed. For the lake house? Babe, it's January. For a divorce retainer. I said, not turning around. Silence behind me. Then the click of her phone screen, lighting up again. She was probably checking the internal Slack, making sure Julian posted the right thank you thread. I threw a week's worth of clothes into the Rimawa. Socks, 2 suits, running shoes, the framed photo of our dog, Arloa, we'd adopted the summer. We filed the Langford incorporation papers. She never liked Arlo much. Said he shed on the Zegna. My phone buzzed. Julian, honored to carry the torch on the integration phase. EC, appreciate you setting the table. I stared at it for a second, thumb hovering. Me, check your vesting schedule. Sent. Victoria appeared in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed. The amusement was gone now. Not anger, yet just that cold recalibration she does when a forecast misses. You're seriously doing the aggrieved spouse bit? I'm doing the audit. I said, zip the bag. You walk out of this apartment. I don't chase. She said, good. Chasing violates the prenup non-solicitation carve-out anyway. I grabbed Arlo's leash off the hook. He trotted in from the living room like he already knew the script. Victoria stepped into the hallway, lowered her voice. Claire's already asking why Midwest margin compressed. I need you steady for the earnings call next week. Then called Julian. He's got great optics. Ethan, her voice dropped another notch. Something almost real flickered behind it. Don't punish the business because you're pissed at me. I slung the bag over my shoulder, clipped Arlo's lead, and met her eyes. You made the business the punishment. I said, not me. The Streeterville rental wasn't much one bedroom. Terrible light, a view of a parking deck. Exactly what a guy leaving a 9-figure marriage is supposed to have. So the tabloids can't call it a grift. I set the suitcase down, poured a glass of tap water, and sat on the edge of the mattress. Nate texted at 10:47. Nate, positions live. 200K shorts at $48. 40. Claire's people sniffing too. What's the catalyst drop? Me. Give it 48 hours. She'll try to manage the narrative without me in the room. Watch the guidance. Nate. You sure you want her name on the short side of your wife's stock? Me. Ex-wife soon. And it's not a short. It's a correction. At 11:23, Victoria called. Not a FaceTime. Just audio. I let it ring twice before picking up. Arlo's not registered to you, she said by way of greeting. No hello. He's microchipped to the old address. I noticed his bowl's gone. I noticed a lot of things today, too. A beat. She hated silence on the phone. She always filled it. HR drafted a statement for the internal leak. Says you're taking a sabbatical to advise Nate on fund strategy. Clean exit. No noise. Tell them the truth. I said, say the CEO resigned. Don't be cute. I'm not. I emailed my resignation to Cheryl at 6:15. Effective end of day Friday. Check your spam folder. Torai, you might have been busy handing out envelopes. Another silence. Longer this time. When she spoke again, the edge was back. You think walking makes you indispensable. I think staying made me cheap. I said, and hung up. Julian texted again at midnight. Julian, Tori says you're spiraling. I can smooth this with comms if you want to draft a joint note about shared leadership evolution. I blocked his number. Opened my laptop instead. Pulled the folder Marissa had sent me 6 weeks ago, the one Mark Channel stuffing / Q3 warehouse receipts. I didn't plan to use it. Not yet. But Victoria had always operated on the theory that information was only dangerous when it was asymmetrical. Tonight, she'd made it symmetrical. I forwarded the unopened comp letter from October the 1 with the 1% clausito, my personal Gmail. Then replied to Nate. Me. Hold the short. Add 10% more weight to the March puts. Close the lid. Arlo sighed and curled into the corner of the bare mattress. And for the first time since the Peninsula Ballroom, the air in the room actually tasted like mine. Tomorrow I'd draft a resignation letter she couldn't ignore. Tomorrow I'd stop being a guy who fixed her mistakes for a cut of the upside. Tonight, I'd just listen to the dog breathe and watch the parking deck lights blur against a window. Somewhere downtown, Langford Global's IR team was probably already spinning the story. Let them. They could explain the numbers without me. Cheryl booked the meeting for Thursday at 9. Victoria moved it to Wednesday at 7:30, which meant she wanted it before the markets opened. She also changed the location from the River North boardroom to the West Loop townhouse her turf. Her rules. The way she used to handle contractor disputes when we were still pretending the company fit inside a two-bedroom walk-up. She was already at the kitchen island when I walked in. Yoga pants, a cashmere crewneck, reading glasses, the resignation email printed out next to a latte she hadn't touched. You CC'd Claire, she said by way of good morning. She sits on comp committee. You blind CC'd her. BCC, I corrected, dropping the leather folio on the counter. Claire likes discretion. I was being polite. She slid a stapled packet across the marble. 3 pages. Standard mutual release. Non disparagement, a refreshed non-compete addendum. The final page had a handwritten number in the marginers. Not legals. $400. 000 severance. Sign this, she said, and we announce you're stepping down for family health reasons. You keep the title of Senior Advisor Emeritus. You keep the medical, and you cash the settlement. In exchange, you sit tight on whatever Nate's whispering in your ear. I didn't pick up the pen. I pushed my own document toward her instead. It was a single-page irrevocable delegation notice. Dated the day she'd forced me to take the Class B supervoting shares last springback, when Claire was threatening to block the Series D, and Victoria needed someone she absolutely trusted to hold the proxy block. She'd cried in the car that night, told me it was temporary, told me she hated the board more than she hated asking for help. Victoria glanced at the header, then stilled. What is this? She said. Revocation. I said, and transfer instructions. I'm returning the Class B designation to the trust. But since you triggered the change in control definition in subsection 4D by reallocating the incentive pool without COO sign-off, the shares revert to independent voting status effective Friday at 5 p.m. unless I countersign the vesting waiver, which I won't. She took the glasses off, set them down very carefully. You're leveraging the proxy to negotiate severance? No, I said. I'm telling you there is no negotiation. Julian can't vote these. Torai, you just gave away the only man who could. She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You are not doing this. I already filed a notice with the transfer agent yesterday afternoon. Her hand went to her phone on instinct-told habit, calling Julian to fix something she didn't want to touch. Then she stopped herself. You want to blow up the cap table because your feelings are hurt? Stop saying that. I said, you don't get to shrink this into feelings. You rewrote a contracted payout in front of investors and called it strategic agility. That's a breach of the operating agreement, not a marital spat. The operating agreement is silent on spousal. Section 8.2. I cut in. Material alteration of executive compensation requires dual signatory. You knew that. You just figured I wouldn't litigate my own wife. She leaned forward, lowering her voice the way she does when she thinks she's de-escalating. Ethan, listen to me. Julian's flailing. Claire is already breathing down my neck about Midwest margin compression. If you pull the proxy and walk out the door, I have no leverage with the Series D holders. You know what happens if I miss guidance next quarter? You learn how to run a company without diluting the guy doing the work. She stood up. You're being vindictive. I'm being consistent. You treated me like an employee. I'm exiting like one. Julian texted while I was walking out to the car. Again, different number. Same energy. Unknown. Tori's a mess. Earnings prep is a disaster without you. Can we just align on the talking points so I don't embarrass myself on the analyst call? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He'd embarrass himself regardless, still thought an earnings call was a TED Talk. At noon, Claire called, straight to the point, the way old money boards always are when they smell structural rot. Ethan, she said, Victoria tells me you're taking some time. Resigning. Claire, there's a difference. Your name came off the insider schedule this morning. It did. Shame, she said, and meant it. She built the brand, but you kept the doors open. Who's explaining the Des Plaines variance to the auditors now? Julian, apparently. Claire made a noise like someone tasting bad wine. If you're free next week, I'd like to buy you coffee. Off the record. Just catching up. Translation. She was already canvassing for an interim. I'll clear the calendar. I said, Victoria tried the softer play that night. 9:47 p.m. No call this time FaceTime from a hotel room in New York. Hair damp. Backlit, so it looked accidental. Arlo okay? She asked, sleeping. I'm in the ST. Regis. They lost my bags. Had to wear the same blazer to the Morgan Stanley lunch twice. Sounds tough. She hesitated. A manufactured pause. I shouldn't have handled the bonus announcement the way I did. It was tone deaf. It was. But the proxy think that's nuclear. Ethan, you know I can't go into the March meeting without those votes. Then promote Julian to COO and give him proxy. I said, see how long Claire lasts before she fires you both. She flinched. Real. That time. You're really going to feed them? I'm not feeding anyone. I'm just not standing between you and the consequences anymore. She swallowed. Her voice dropped half an octave. The version of her that used to ask me to bring her coffee when she was pulling all-nighters in the early days. You really taking the dog? Arlo shifted against my leg, hearing his name even through the speaker. The dog never lied to me. I said, silence on her end. Then the screen went black. Friday was my last day on the org chart. I cleared my desk-due boxes, mostly binders, and wiped the laptop. Cheryl from HR hovered near the door like she expected me to steal a monitor on the way out. Julian was waiting by the elevators. Of course he was. He had a cardboard Starbucks cup and a nervous smile, playing junior partner in a suit that still didn't fit his shoulders. Ethan, he said, stepping into my path. Can we just level for a second? Tori's barely sleeping. The analysts are already pinging about the COO gap. I'm trying to hold the Midwest narrative together, but Claire's asking for supply chain decks I didn't build. Then send her the ones I built. I said, hitting the down button. I don't have access. Exactly. His smile thinned. You don't have to make this a scorched earth thing. We're all on the same equity. I turned and looked at him. Properly looked. Young enough to think optics were the whole job. Desperate enough to believe Victoria actually respected him. You wanted the money. I said, now you get the job title. Good luck explaining standard deviation to Claire without sounding like a LinkedIn post. The elevator dinged. I stepped in. He stayed in the hall. Suddenly very small in the wide lobby. She'll replace you too. I added before the doors closed. Just so you know, once you stop being useful, she'll find a new agile, hire, and hand your comp over to them. Monday morning. Langford Global issued the press release. Langford Global announces the departure of Chief Operating Officer Ethan Cole, effective immediately, to pursue private investment opportunities. The company thanks Mr. Cole for his contributions. They spelled my middle initial wrong. E.J. Cole instead of E. M. Victoria knew that. She always teased me about the M. Malcolm, my grandfather's name. She knew. By 9:15 a.m., the stock ticked down 2.5 points on Zero News. Just vibes. Just a market, realizing the adult had left the room. Nate texted. Nate, down 4% pre-market. No catalyst yet. Just panic. You sure you don't want to cover and flip long? Me, not yet. Let her prove she can't do it alone. Nate, she's already proving it. Claire just requested your cell from me directly. Marissa called at lunch. Marissa, she's telling people you left for mental health maintenance. Me, better than what you told me to say. Marissa, you wanted to leak the channel stuffing memo? Now's the window. SEC tip line goes a long way when a CEO's rewriting comp mid-quarter. Me, not yet. Let her think she's winning the PR war through the weekend. At 6:02 p.m. Victoria's name flashed on my screen. Not a text, not a stage FaceTime, just a normal call. No mock-up, no lighting trick. You let them spell your name wrong. She said, you approved the wire on the bonus. I said, we're both careless lately. She exhaled hard through her nose. Claire wants a transition call Tuesday. She asked if you'd stay on as a consultant through Q1. What did you tell her? I told her you were being punitive and irrational. And she said that explains the stock move but doesn't solve the margin call. Another pause. When she spoke again, the control was fraying at the edges. Ethan, come back for the call. One call. We don't even have to undo Julian's thing publicly. I'll move him to chief of staff. We keep the bonus quiet. And you sit on the earnings prep like nothing happened. I opened my laptop, pulled up the short position. Still green. You're offering me a consulting retainer on a marriage you already diluted. I said, this isn't about the marriage right now. It's never been about the marriage. Torai, that's the whole problem. I ended the call and blocked her number on the primary line. Saved her work cell under a different contact just in case legal needed to reach me. Then fired off the email I drafted Wednesday night. To Board of Directors. Lung for Global, Sebaha Claire Donovan. From Ethan Cole, Personal Capacity. Subject: Voluntary withdrawal of Class B voting proxy formal declination of interim advisor role. Per our conversations, I will not be participating in Q1 earnings preparation or any subsequent board advisory capacity. All delegated voting rights revert as of 5 p.m. CT Friday. Best of luck to the executive team. I hit send. Arlo jumped up on the couch, put his chin on my knee. Outside, the Chicago skyline was doing its usual winter gray, but the trading app on my second monitor showed Langford dipping another 8% in after hours. Victoria would be in her office right now refreshing the same feed, wondering if I was bluffing, wondering if Claire was already texting me back. She'd spend the weekend rewriting the earnings deck herself. She'd realized Julian couldn't explain gross margin to save his life. And by Tuesday morning, she'd understand that the bonus wasn't the loss. The loss was the guy who used to catch her mistakes before the board saw them. I scratched Arlo behind the ears and closed the laptop. Let Tuesday come. Claire booked the coffee at Soho House, but she didn't use the members' lounge. She picked the bistro 2 blocks from Langford's NYC satellite office public. Low-ceilinged, nowhere for either of us to play founder cosplay. She was already at the table when I walked in, espresso untouched, reading a printed copy of the Midwest Variance deck Julian had sent out Friday. She didn't stand, just tapped the deck. Page 4, she said. Freight absorption up 19%, and he labels it Dynamic Routing Efficiency. That's not a deck. Ethan, that's a ransom note. He used a McKinsey slide template and hoped no one checked the math. I said, sitting. Victoria approved it. She signs what he puts in front of her. When she's distracted, Claire set the deck aside. No plaisanteries. No fake condolences about the marriage. Old money boards don't care who sleeps where. They care about the 10K. Your proxy reversion hit the cap table system Saturday. She said, I reviewed the Series D protective provisions this morning. Without those Class B votes, she can't push the warehouse expansion past audit committee sign-off. She knows that. Why'd you walk? She gave my Q4 bonus to Julian. I said, Claire blinked once. That's it? That's the symptom. The disease is she treats governance like an extension of her personal calendar. Claire stirred her espresso. Didn't drink it. You were the adult. Now there isn't one. I'm not asking you to reconcile with her. I'm asking if you'd consider an interim operating committee appointment through Q1. No title, no salary, just a signature on the variance memos. So I don't have to explain a restatement to Lazard. I leaned back. And what does Victoria think of you asking me that? She told me you were emotionally compromised and leveraging the proxy to destabilize the equity. Sounds like her. But Claire went on, unfazed. She also told me an hour ago she'd consider bringing you back as a paid consultant if I pressured you. So she's already folding. I just need to know if you're actually out or if this is a negotiating posture. I held her gaze. I'm out, but I'm not signing anything that keeps her insulated. Claire studied me for a long second, then reached into her bag and slid a thumb drive across the table. Internal audit flag channel inventory in Q3. Dubuque and Des Moines warehouses showing double-billed receipts. Victoria's CFO buried it in intercompany eliminations. You know anything about that? I know the CFO was following instructions. I said, and you didn't flag it. I was the COO. I wasn't the whistleblower. There's a difference. She withdrew the drive, nodded once. Difference noted. Expect a board motion Wednesday to freeze the CFO's signing authority until we review the Midwest close. Julian won't survive the deposition prep. He'll blame Victoria before lunch. Claire finally smiled thin. Satisfied. Good. Let him. Victoria found out about the coffee before I even made it back to the hotel. Victoria, you met with Claire behind my back? Me. She invited me. Victoria. She's circling. If you feed her. Me. I'm not feeding anyone. Torai. I just stopped cleaning up the plate. 30 minutes later. Julian texted from a spoofed iMessage address. Classic panic move. Unknown. Claire just asked me for the raw warehouse receipts from October. I don't even know what double billing looks like. Mun, can you just tell me which file to pull so I don't hang us both out? I didn't answer. Marissa called instead. Marissa. Tip line confirmation came through. SEC took the Q3 stuffing memo. They won't act yet, but the inquiry letter will land in her inbox by Thursday. Me. She'll spin it as routine. Marissa. Maybe, but the stock doesn't spin. Sure enough, by 3 p.m. EST, Langford was down 6% on a Bloomberg squib about board-level discussions regarding supply chain accounting practices. Nate texted from the desk in Chicago. Nate, adding to the short here. We're at 420K shares now. Market smelling blood. You sure don't want to step in and play white knight? You could buy the dip. Look like a hero. Me. Heroes don't get asked to hand their bonuses to secretaries. Victoria flew back to Chicago that night. I stayed in New York an extra day to dodge the physical confrontation. But she cornered me Wednesday morning in the Streeterville garage when I went to move my car. She was in the back of a black Suburban, door open, coat thrown over her lap, like she'd been waiting since dawn. Get in, she said. I'm not getting in a car with you. Then stand there and listen. Claire froze Mark's signature. Do you have any idea what that does to vendor payments? It forces you to explain the math instead of hiding behind Julian's slide decks. She swung her legs out, stood up, no muck-up, dark circles. The kind of tired that doesn't wash off with facial. For half a second, she looked like the woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder in the early Langford days. But the opening line killed the illusion. You're enjoying this, she said flatly. I'm watching correction. You met with Claire. You're feeding them a narrative that I cooked the books. I didn't have to feed them anything. The books do the talking. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. That boardroom hushed tone again. You always do this. You act like the neutral party while you quietly reposition yourself as the only competent operator left. It's not noble, Ethan. It's just leverage. No, I said. Leverage was when you used my name to hold the proxy, so you didn't have to share power with Claire. Now the proxy is gone. The CFO's frozen. And you're standing in a parking garage because you don't have a signature to pay your own freight bills. That's not leverage. That's gravity. Something cracked in her face, then not quite regret. More like the realization that the room had shifted, and she hadn't noticed the door closing. You'll come back, she said, quieter. You always do. You hate the chaos more than you hate me. I don't hate you, I said, unlocking the car. Hatred implies I'm still invested in how you turn out. She didn't move out of the way. And, Arlo, you're really going to keep dodging co-parenting texts? You didn't ask about the dog until Claire froze the CFO. Finally, she stepped back. The Suburban driver shut the door for her without being told. Through the tinted glass, she pulled out her phone. Typing fast, probably drafting the statement that would frame the audit freeze as proactive governance enhancements. Thursday morning, the SEC inquiry letter landed. Langford IR issued a 2-sentence non-response. By noon, a financial blogger in Connecticut connected the dots between the CFO freeze and the COO departure. The headline was blunt: Langford Global COO exit, followed by accounting review. Stock dropped another 5%. Single-day wipeout pushing 11% total since the bonus announcement. Julian, predictably, folded. Marissa forwarded me an internal email Julian sent to Victoria at 1:17 a.m. Claire's asking for the Q3 originals. If we have to restate, I need written indemnification before I pull the warehouse files. Also, comms want a quote from me on Ethan's exit, should I say, amicable divergence, or lean into the mental health framing you use with Forbes. I read it once, forwarded it to Claire with one line. For context on who's drafting your public statements. Claire replied 5 minutes later. Motion to appoint interim CEO goes to special committee Monday. Victoria will be notified this afternoon. Coffee again next week? Me. I'll clear it. That night, Victoria called from a block line. No performative softness this time. Pure adrenaline. You CC'd Claire my secretary's email? Forwarded it. Semantics. He's a kid. He's 28 and just asked you to indemnify him for your fraud. He's exactly who you promoted. She inhaled sharp. Monday, they're going to try to strip me. They already are. You're just noticing. If you walk into that committee meeting and vouch for just one stabilizing quote, they hold the vote. And what's the offer? I asked. Title stays, so. Julian moves. Bonus refer said, we redo the prenup. Stop. I said, you're still negotiating like I want back in. Don't do this to the company. She said, voice rising for the first time. Don't burn the equity down because you're bitter about a dinner speech. The equity's fine. I said, it's just finding its real price without you propping it up with bad inventory. She hung up. Hard. Marissa texted a minute later. Marissa, wire trace just hit. Julian transferred 20 grand of the bonus money to a Palo Alto incubator account yesterday. He's already looking for his next gig. Me? Of course he is. I opened the trading app. Nate had nudged the short up again overnight. Red everywhere. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would when I first sent that first text to Nate 2 weeks ago. Mostly I just felt tired of reading the same patterns in different fonts. I typed out a message to Claire. Me, if the committee needs a stabilization memo on Q4 ops, I'll draft a factual endorsements. No titles. After that, I'm done. Then I deleted the draft. Better to let the vote happen clean. Better to let her sit in the silence of Monday morning without a single signature to hide behind. She'd spent 3 years treating the business like a mirror. Now the mirror was cracking, and she was realizing the only person left holding the glass was her. My phone buzzed one last time before I went to sleep. Victoria, you really resigning as husband next? Or is that just another leverage play? I didn't reply, just archived the thread, closed the laptop, and watched Arlo settle onto the rug like he finally understood we weren't going back to the penthouse. Monday was going to be ugly. Good. Julian leaked the Q3 warehouse memo to Business Insider at 6:14 a.m. On Tuesday. Not the full restatement, just the internal Slack thread, where Victoria told him to label the duplicate receipts as intercompany freight reconciliation optimization. He made sure his own name was nowhere near the screenshots. Classic junior move. Bury the body and leave your own shovel at the scene so everyone knows you were helpful. By 8:03, Langford stock gapped down 9% on the open. Claire texted once. Committee vote moved to Thursday. Interim CEO search is live. Victoria didn't call me. Not that morning. Pride has a longer half-life than panic. She spent the day issuing a statement blaming legacy ops misalignment and confirming Julian was taking a strategic leave of absence to focus on external education commitments. Translation, she fired him in a press release and hoped the market would buy the euphemism. Julian, naturally, went to Twitter. He didn't use his main account, deleted that by noon, but his burner was easy enough to find if you knew the Yale class group. When culture eats strategy from the top, the best talent always takes the exit ramp. Grateful for what I learned. Onward. Nate sent it to me with a laughing emoji. Nate, kid just called his boss toxic on a fintech burner while cashing her tuition check. You were right. He's a LinkedIn post with a pulse. Me, cover the short. Nate, already halfway there. You flipping long? Me, no. Wait for the vote. She showed up at the Streeterville rental at 10:42 p.m. Thursday. I knew it was her before she knocked. Arlo lifted his head off the rug and didn't growl. Just did that soft huff he saves for people he used to trust. She had a bottle of Michter's. The Weller 12 was what I actually drank, but she always bought the Michter's because it photographed better. Even now, I opened the door and left it there. Didn't step aside. She took that as permission and walked in, set the bottle on the narrow console table like she owned the lease. Julian's gone, she said, not sitting. Claire's got 3 names for interim. None of them know the Midwest close. None of them need to. I said, you restate, take the hit, renegotiate the carrier contracts. It's basic. It's not basic if I lose the Series D bridge. Her voice was steady, but her hands, wherein she kept flexing her fingers around the bottleneck. I need you to sit interim advisor through the guidance revision. 1 title, 2 weeks. I reversed the bonus paperwork retroactively. We put out a joint note about aligned leadership. And Claire backs off the CEO motion. You drove here to pitch me a 2-week retention package. I said, I drove here because you're still answering Claire's texts, and I'm the one who built the goddamn company. She snapped, then caught herself, forced the volume down. Sorry, I am not doing the charm offense tonight. Ethan, I've asking. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Ask. She exhaled, looked at the floor, then back up. I gave him the bonus because he made me feel like I was still building something. With you, she hesitated, chose the words like they cost money. It always felt like an audit. You never liked the wins. You just waited for the variance. You didn't want a partner. I said, you wanted a fixer who didn't charge by the hour. That's not fair. You handed a contracted payout to a guy who can't read a balance sheet, so he'd validate your Forbes narrative. Fairness wasn't part of the decision tree. Torai, she set the bottle down, harder than she meant to. Glass clinked against the cheap laminate. You're offering me nothing. You shorted the stock. You fed Claire the paper trail. And now you're standing there acting like you're above the wreckage. I'm not above it. I'm just not cleaning it. She stepped closer, dropped the CEO mask completely. It was the closest thing to honest I'd heard from her in 2 years. If I lose the vote tomorrow, they strip me to chairman emeritus with 5% and a non-compete. You know what that does to my reputation in this city? Same thing it did to mine when you announced the bonus in front of the room. Silence. Heavy. Unmoving. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor slammed a dishwasher. Victoria's throat worked. She reached out now for the bottle, for my arm. Just brush the sleeve. Come back and fix it. Please. Not for the title. For us. I stepped sideways, breaking the contact without making a show of it. You're offering me a retention package on a marriage you already diluted. Her hand dropped. The humiliation finally landed real. Unpolished. You're really going to let Claire install someone else over me? Claire's not installing someone over you. You invited her into the vacancy the day you made Julian the face of the close. She stood there for a long moment, jaw locked, trying to find a version of the conversation where she still had leverage. Couldn't find one. She grabbed the bottle by the neck, unopened, and walked to the door. You'll regret this, she said, but it lacked heat, just sounded tired. I regretted it when I signed the prenup carve-out, letting you override comp without dual signatory. I said, everything since has just been confirmation. She left without slamming the door. First time in a decade she left a fight quietly. Friday morning. The committee vote was unanimous. Victoria retained the chairman title on paper, surrendered CEO operation authority, and was barred from signing any vendor agreements over $50,000. Interim search narrowed to 2 candidates Claire had already pre-cleared. Julian's burner tweet caught a screenshot of the internal memo and appended a new line. Culture starts at the top. Glad to see the board course correcting. Victoria's phone must have melted. Marissa forwarded the meltdown an hour later. Victoria had fired off a cease and desist to Julian's parents' address in Greenwich. Petty, late, and entirely unhelpful. Claire called me at noon. Interim is happening with or without you, she said. But if you'd rather stop shorting your ex-wife and start buying the dip as a creditor advisor, Nate's fund could structure a debt-to-equity conversion through the bridge round. You'd come in clean. No taitas. Just preferred. I didn't answer right away. Opened the laptop. Nate had already drawn up the term sheet convertible notes at a 32% discount to the post-restatement valuation. It was a white knight bid dressed as a hedge. She'd have to sign away voting control. Claire added, reading my silence, "She won't. She will, if you're the one putting the pen in front of her." I thought about the Mictors on the console, thought about the bonus envelope Julian took with both hands, thought about the way she said, "Please," like it physically hurt. Send the terms. I said, I'll draft a coverage memo, but I'm not negotiating with her directly. Put Cheryl in the loop. Done. Claire said, satisfied. One more thing, Julian, shopping a Substack about life inside Langford's Boys Club. I assume you have receipts disproving that particular irony? I have his expense report from the Stanford deposit. I said, Marissa pulled the wire trace. Claire chuckled once. Dry. Perfect. Kill him with his own tuition. Receipt if he drops it. That night, the stock closed down another 4% on the interim CO news. Overall damage since the peninsula, 22% off the 52-week high. Nearly $180 million in market cap gone. Victoria texted from her real number, stripped of the performative politeness. Victoria, Claire says you're structuring the bridge. Me, she's structuring it. I'm reviewing. Victoria, you doing this to save the equity or just to be the one who signs my exit? Me, there's no difference anymore. She didn't reply for an hour. When the bubble popped back up, it wasn't an argument, just a question. Victoria, was any of it real to you? Or was I always the audit? I stared at the screen longer than I meant to. Arlo nudged my knee, wanting out for a walk. I locked the phone, clipped the leash, and didn't answer. Some questions aren't answered in text. Some aren't answered at all. Theory just priced into the tender offer. Outside, the Chicago wind was mean and wet. I walked 3 blocks before I realized I was heading, by muscle memory, toward the Old River North building. Turn around halfway, back in the apartment. I opened a notebook and typed the trade order Nate had been waiting on all week. Close remaining shorts. Initiate preferred position allocation via Nate's SPV. Debt to equity authorized. Hit enter. The market had punished her enough. Now it was time to stop betting against the corpse and walk in to collect the bones. Let her see the term sheet Monday. Let her decide if survival was worth signing the last of it away. Either way, the audit was officially closed. Delaware Court of Chancery sets the tone before anyone opens their mouth to much money in too small a room. Claire booked the mediation slot for 8 a.m. so Victoria couldn't stall on hair and lighting. I flew in on the red eye. Nate beside me with the term sheet already printed on heavier stock than Langford's last annual report. Victoria was already in the hallway outside the conference suite when we got there. No coat, just a black dress and the Cartier watch I bought her the week we filed the Series B. She didn't look at Nate. Just me. You brought a fun partner to a marriage conversation, she said. It stopped being a marriage conversation when Cheryl added the non-compete exhibit. I said, this is a capital structure meeting. Nate handed the folder to her counsel without commentary. The lead associate from Skadden flipped it open, scanned page 3, and went very still. This is a debt-to-equity conversion, the associate said, mostly to Victoria. I know what it is, she said, at a 32% discount to post-restatement valuation. He went on, uselessly, and it strips the chairman of operational signatory entirely. You retain 4.9% common and step down as named executive officer. Victoria took the folder herself. Read the signature block. saw my name next to the SPV vehicle. Her mouth flattened. "You're buying the bridge so you can fire me in a footnote," she said. "I'm buying the bridge so the company doesn't miss payroll on the Des Moines carrier contracts Monday morning." I said, "Claire already pre-cleared it. The only thing missing is your acknowledgement that the CEO search is over and the interim title goes to the creditor committee rep." She leaned back against the wainscoting, arms crossed. "Who's the rep?" "Me. Interim executive chairman. 0 salary. Voting preferred. Just enough to get the restatement filed and Julian's Substack killed before he drops the Stanford wire trace." Her eyes narrowed. "You want the chair. I want the mess cleaned up so I can sell the preferred back to Strategic in 6 months and never say the word Langford again." Skadden cleared his throat. "Mrs. Langford Cole, if we don't execute the forbearance by noon, the Series D holders can accelerate the warehouse line. That's a Chapter 11 filing by Wednesday." Victoria ignored him, stayed on me. "If I sign this, you walk away from the divorce looking like the guy who saved the equity." "I am saving the equity. The divorce is a separate filing Marissa is drafting right now in Chicago." That stopped her, not the term sheet, the fact that my sister, a retired SEC investigator, was already drawing up the dissolution papers while we stood here. She let out a short, disbelieving breath, almost a laugh. "You had the whole playbook ready before you even packed the Rimawa. You made the offer public at the Peninsula." I said, "I just followed the process." She stepped forward, lowered her voice so Skadden and Nate faded out of the frame. "You said you don't bill me anymore." She murmured, "But this is a hostile takeover of my life. It's a white knight bid." "Torai," I said, sliding a pen out of Nate's folder and setting it on top. "Take it and watch the ticker recover. Or hold out and explain a bankruptcy petition to Forbes. Your move." She stared at the pen like it might burn her. Then she flipped to the signature page, scrawled her name in the same aggressive cursive she used on the bonus reallocation memo 3 weeks ago, and dropped the pen on the floor. "Congratulations, Chairman," she said. Nate didn't smile, just picked up the executed pages and walked them straight to the court coordinator. Standard operating procedure. No celebration. Langford Global announced a leadership transition at 10:17 a.m. Eastern. Company appoints Ethan Cole as executive chairman. Victoria Langford transitions to non-executive capacity effective immediately. Bridge financing secured. The Algos loved it. Shorts covered in a stampede. Stock ripped 14% in the first hour. Another 4% through the afternoon. By the closing bell, Langford had clawed back almost half of what it lost since the bonus fiasco. CNBC ran a cheering that made Nate text me twice, the husband who called the bottom. Victoria didn't stay for the cameras. She was already gone by the time the PR hit the wire. I found her on the courthouse steps, smoking an American spirit she definitely didn't inhale, staring at the Wilmington traffic. "You shouldn't be out here," I said, stopping 2 stairs down. "Skadden will want you off record until the restatement drops." "I don't care about the restatement," she said, not looking at me. "Where's Julian?" "Palm Springs. Apparently. Burner account's dead." "Good. He was going to leak the tuition wire today at noon." Nate's comms guy bought the draft off his Substack editor for 5 figures. "It's dead too." She finally turned her head. The anger was gone. What was left was worse curiosity. "You really never wanted the CEO's seat back?" "No. Then why come in at all? You could have just watched it zero out and kept your short profit." I thought about the answer for half a block of silence. There wasn't a clean one. Somewhere between spite and pride and the fact that I'd helped write the first business plan on a napkin in a River North wine bar and didn't love watching strangers torch it. "Because you asked me to build it." I said, "Didn't ask you to dilute me doing it." She nodded once, accepting the distinction even if she didn't like it, held out the cigarette like she expected an ashtray that didn't exist, then dropped it and crushed it under her heel. "Will you ever tell me why you really left?" She asked. "You already know," I said, adjusting the bag on my shoulder. "It wasn't the bonus." She reached out old reflex, the same one from the Streeterville apartment angling, to hook her arm through mine for the walk to the car, so the street photographers wouldn't have a shot of us apart. I stepped aside before she made contact. Don't, I said. She froze, then let her hand fall back to her side. No flinch this time, just a slow, professional acceptance. Marissa will send the dissolution papers to Cheryl Monday morning. Prenup holds? Mostly. I waive the house. You keep the penthouse. I kept Arlo in the preferred. A dry smile ghosted across her face. Fair trade. Wasn't a trade. I said, just a distribution. 3 months later. Langford closed Q1 guidance inside the revised range. Claire bought me dinner in Chicago to talk about selling preferred to a PE shop. I told her to wait another quarter let Victoria finish the non-exec transition quietly so the board didn't look like a coup every time the earnings call aired. Marriage paperwork finalized on a Tuesday. No contested hearing. Just e-signatures and a calendar notification. That Friday, a padded envelope arrived at the new Placino return address. No tracking, just a Chicago postmark and Victoria's handwriting on the plastic sleeve. Inside was the engagement photo we used for the first Langford holiday card. Me in a navy suit, her leaning into my shoulder. Both of us looking like we believed the numbers would always go up. Taped to the back. Printed in Langford IR letterhead formatting. Congratulations on your new capital structure. No signature. She didn't need one. Arlo sniffed the envelope, decided it wasn't food, and flopped back onto the rug. I dropped the photo in the recycling, kept the slip of paper on the desk next to the monitor, and pulled up the brokerage portal. Preferred position marked green. Divorce docket closed. Company stabilized. I shut the laptop, clipped the leash to Arlo's collar, and headed out into the early summer air without checking my phone once. Whatever Victoria did with the 4.9% after that was someone else's variance to manage, not mine.